Alright guys, so this is the second part of my mental emotions on the Appalachian Trail. In this part I'm really going to talk about the tips and the tricks that I learned on the trail, not just from me but from others, that hopefully will be able to help you when you need them. Alright, well, when I look back at the trail and relive these moments, I will tell you the first thing that I thought was perception was definitely reality. I realized for myself as well as from other hikers, any parts of the trail that we expected to have a different result because of rumors we heard or by looking at AWOL's guide and the elevation profiles. When we hit parts of the trail that veered off of what our expectations were, these were the times when you really hit those mental emotions on the trail. Virginia can be a really tough state. What I heard on the trail was it gets a lot easier once you get into Virginia. I will tell you that Virginia is more difficult than most people say that it is. So when they experienced Virginia, they weren't prepared to handle the difference between the expectation and their own perception. Now everyone's going to perceive things a little differently. When I reflect back to the Appalachian Trail, I truly believe that the hardest thing that I ever had to overcome was my mental emotions. Your mental emotions can really play tricks on you. Now, in a moment I'm going to talk about the tricks that I played back to it, but first I want to cover a few things. Sometimes you feel like Groundhog Day. I guess if I could put that at best, hiking on the Appalachian Trail can be like Groundhog Day. Every day can be very similar. Now obviously you're going to be hiking in different areas, you're going to see different things, the trail will be different. However, you get into routines. We are creatures of habit, and while you're hiking on the Appalachian Trail, you will feel more habitual than you ever have before in your life. Your days consist of getting up at the crack of dawn, breaking down camp, eating breakfast, starting your hike, stopping for some water breaks and for lunch, continuing hiking all day till about 6 o'clock at night, setting up camp, then you eat dinner, maybe bullshit a little bit with the other hikers, and then the sun starts to go down and you go back to bed. The next day it all starts all over again. Wake up, break down camp, eat, hike, eat, hike, eat, hike, set up camp, eat, go to bed, reset. Honestly, so this can be something that is difficult when you've done this now for 2, 3, 4 months. Obviously the longer that you're on the trail, the more difficult this can become. So these are just things that happen on the trail that we feel as hikers, that we go through, and in my opinion, and I think in most, these things become so much more taxing than all the physical issues that we experience on the trail. Well, the biggest thing that you can do to combat this is keeping your morale high. I cannot tell you how important morale is on the trail. A lot of people always ask me how I was able to achieve through hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days, and I'll tell you that I had to go and persevere through so many mental issues, and I'm not saying that other hikers don't. We all have mental issues that we have to persevere through, but they're tough. I felt that achieving my goal of finishing the Appalachian Trail, the mental issues I had to persevere through was the toughest challenges I had on the trail. Now for me, the biggest pressure that I felt that's going to be different than maybe most hikers is the pressure to make miles. I think every hiker goes through a portion of this, is the pressure to make miles at some point. especially when they get into Virginia and into the mid-Atlantic states. There is definitely a pressure, even if you don't have a time frame, that you are in the easier area of the trail and that you should be doing more miles than maybe you are. For me, I got so far behind the first half of the trail that I literally was forced to have to hike 25 to 30 miles a day for most of the rest of my journey. The part that was really tough for me was knowing each day, my Groundhog Day consisted of hiking at least 12 to 14 hours and not being able to stop until I hit at least, most days, a mark that started with a 3. So this was very difficult on me. A couple of the other mental emotions that can be really difficult on the trail is hiking in really bad weather. When you're out there and it's downpouring and you got to get miles in, or you have a particular place that you have to be and you have to hike through some really crummy weather, this can be really difficult on you, especially when it's an all-day event. There were a couple days that I hiked in downpouring weather that was raining all day and everything is wet. Nothing is worse than when everything is wet. I believe another mental emotion that is really taxing the hikers is the fear of not finishing, the fear of having to quit. People can feel this as early as Georgia. The fear of not being able to finish your hike, or the fear of quitting and having to go back to reality when you told everyone that you were going to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail, can be a really scary thought. This is something that can really play hard in your emotions. Now, I'd be lying if there weren't times that I thought about whether or not I'd be able to finish the trail. I don't know that I ever got to a point where I had evil thoughts that I was going to quit the trail, but I've definitely had thoughts and fears of not finishing the trail, and I remember these being really tough. Now, I want to walk through things that I did that really helped me overcome these issues on the trail, these mental issues, and also things that I did that really tricked myself into driving my morale, which again, that was the biggest thing I could do, was boost my morale, because that most of the time would fix my mental issues. The first and the easiest thing that I did to boost my morale was my choice of food. Now, I did a resupply video on the food that I really ate the last 1,000 miles or so. Now, this did change from time to time based on what I was feeling like, but I knew that I had to get foods that not only gave me the calories and some of the nutritional things I needed, but more importantly, I needed foods that were going to be able to really boost my morale, things that I really craved, that I really felt like. One of these things was fresh fruit. Now, some hikers do pack out fresh fruit, and I will tell you that that for me was such a morale boost the first day coming out of town that I felt it was important enough to carry a pound or a pound and a half of fruit. I knew it was that important to sacrifice a pound, maybe even more, of weight because of what it would do for my morale. But I had lots of different goodies and snacks. I did mention in my video that I drank a lot of Gatorade. Gatorade was in many ways my salvation. I got sick of drinking just regular water, and Gatorade, there's all kinds of drinks out there, obviously ones that are a lot better for you than Gatorade, but I'll tell you what, Gatorade did the trick for me and really boosted my morale and changed things up for me, and this is something that really lifted my spirits. All right, my next tip was taking some time off in town. I've said this before, there is nothing like taking a zero to combat a bad day. This is truly amazing. For me, I didn't have the luxury of taking lots of days off on the trail. I only took 5. But I did have a trick to be able to feel like I had the time in town to relax and rest my body and really trick my mind. Now, what I did was I would hike as hard as I could the first 8 or 9 hours of a day, get up early, and get into town by 2 o'clock on the days that I tried to get into town. And then what I would do is do all of my resupplying and laundry and chores, I call them chores, and try to have my own personal time where I could rest and relax by 6 p.m. Obviously, I'd have dinner, but what I would do is that following day, I would check out as late as possible. If the hotel let me stay there till noon or 1 p.m., I would honestly stay there all the way till noon or 1. And I actually was able, by the time I left, to have almost 24 hours in town. And then I hiked hard for about 8 or 9 hours. Sometimes I would do a little night hiking to try to get 20 to 23 miles in, and most of the time I was able to. So overall, I was able to get my miles in on a 2-day stretch, but at the same time, I was actually able to spend almost a full day in town. This was a great way for me to spend the time that I needed and really recover. So a few other tips that I have. For me, I had personal challenges. There were things that I set out for myself that would help me keep my mind off of my habitual routines. When all I could think about was just hiking, sometimes it just became tough. So I set personal challenges for myself. Some of these challenges would be like 10 miles by 10 o'clock, 20 miles by 2 o'clock. Or if I had a late start, maybe it was 12 miles by noon. Or maybe it was trying to get to a certain place by a certain time. Whatever the challenge was, I felt that these challenges really helped keep my mind off of thinking too much about nothing. You have all the time in the world on the trail to think about everything and anything you want. And sometimes I found myself just thinking about nothing, just thinking about hiking and walking, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And that was kind of draining on me. So these challenges really helped me out. My next is when I had cell phone service and I got to certain areas like town or the top of a mountain, I would take a moment sometimes when I was feeling down and look into my social media and my YouTube channel. There were so many inspiring comments that people said about me and about my journey, and it only took me a mere minute or two to spend and really look at these comments and be re-energized. So reading these comments were a game changer for me. I can't tell you how many times this helped me persevere through probably my darkest days on the trail. So I want to thank all of you out there, because one of the biggest reasons I was able to achieve my goals was because of you. Another tip I had was take a moment and look at the map of the United States to see how far I have walked. When I looked on my GPS device, it would show the line starting back in Georgia. And when I took a moment to look at that, it really was inspiring to think I've walked through 8 states and 1,000-something miles. It was just incredibly inspiring. And my last tip was taking time when I needed, especially at the top of some of the most gorgeous mountains on the trail, just to bask in the moment. These were the times when I did have tough days that I realized how much better that I had it with my life on the trail, and how much better it was than being stuck back at work. Being on the trail, it just made me realize how great I had it. Now, if you followed Spielberg on his journey, he said something that really stood out to me, and I cannot agree with more. The first section of the Appalachian Trail is all physical. It really tests your physical toughness. The second section of the trail is all about the mental toughness. And once you get through the first 1,500 miles and you get into New Hampshire, it changes from being physical and mental to spiritual. The last 300 miles, 350 miles, although they are tough, but you really start to realize why you came out here. Things become clear. You start to realize, you start to have more clarity in your own life. You change. The trail changes you. This part for me was totally spiritual. I often thought about and envisioned myself and what it was like as I crossed key areas of the trail, especially crossing into Maine, and the feeling of walking up to the very end on top of Mount Katahdin and kissing the sign. I envisioned this so often because I wanted to know what that would feel like. Because anytime that I felt things were too tough, or I had bad thoughts that I needed to take time off, or if there was ever a time that I thought about quitting, these thoughts would help me get through that and help provide clarity of why I'm doing this and that everything I did was worth it. My hike of the Appalachian Trail was a pilgrimage. This was something that I thought about in the beginning and wondered how the trail would change me, and it was just amazing to see the impact and the lasting impressions that the trail had on me. I began to realize how simple that life was. I realized how little I actually needed in this life to be happy. Hearing that I was going to be able to move back home to my family was such a boost and really helped provide even more clarity to me, to my mind, to life. But I will tell you that everything that I wanted to get out of the trail, I got and more. When I passed the 2,000 mile mark, reality really started to set in. At that point in time, I felt accomplished. I felt accomplished during many parts of the trail, but I felt accomplished at that point. I felt that anything that happened from there on out, no matter what, that I was accomplished. I got what I wanted and needed out of the trail. All of the physical and mental challenges that you are going to have on the trail will shape you and will change you if you're open to the change. I hope that every person here has an opportunity to live their dreams, and if getting on the trail is one of those dreams, do it. You will regret it. I will tell you that I couldn't have thought of a better way to spend my summer than through hiking the Appalachian Trail. Alright, so that wraps up my video on the mental emotions that I experienced on the Appalachian Trail. Thanks again, everyone. Stay tuned for another sighting, and remember to always follow Bigfoot.